Dr. Roger Gewolb, finance entrepreneur and geopolitics expert and a friend of Donald Trump. Roger, great to see you. It's been so moving to see Donald Trump surrounded by friends and families and supporters at the Republican National Convention just days after he was shot in the face. How has his assassination attempt impacted you? And can I get your reaction to it?
Well, it's been a real shock. I mean, it's a shock to see anybody that you know. In fact, I mean, just people that you know by sight and don't even know well. You just kind of know they exist as human beings in your aura, and to see them shot like that, I'm still, I don't think, over it. It's just to see somebody that you know and that you speak to and that you sat with and stuff, and be hit by a bullet, and especially in a circumstance where if he hadn't looked away at the illegal immigration chart, his head would have been blown apart like JFK's. It's just, and the world would have changed forever dramatically. It just doesn't even bear thinking about.
Absolutely. It was just so close. Donald Trump has released a new campaign ad. Let's take a look.
Let me tell you something you already know. The world ain't all sunshine and rainbows. It's a very mean and nasty place, and I don't care how tough you are, it will beat you to your knees and keep you there permanently if you let it. You, me, or nobody is gonna hit as hard as life. But it ain't about how hard you hit. It's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward. How much you can take and keep moving forward. That's how winning is done.
It's pretty powerful. CNN's also reporting that Donald Trump may not reach just 270 electoral college votes in November, but 330. How has what happened on Saturday, how do you think that's actually going to impact his chances on November 5?
A lot of the reports and intelligence that I'm reading, Gabriella, are saying slightly, but I think it will be a lot more than that. America right now needs a hero, and he's shown that he's a hero, and it's just so ironic. I feel sorry for him that poor, President Trump takes a bullet and poor Joe Biden gets COVID. I mean, it's just crazy. But somebody, I said a long, long time ago, and I've been saying ever since, that someone said long ago, with every major election, something always happens out of the blue that nobody expected right before, the finish line, which changes everything.
Yeah, fair point. Well, this certainly has changed a lot. 2 days after Donald Trump was shot, he announced his running mate, 39-year-old from Ohio, Vance, who has an incredible rag to riches story. And let's take a listen.
He just said, look, I think we've got to go save this country. I think you're the guy who can help me in the best way. You can help me govern. You can help me win. You can help me in some of these Midwestern states like Pennsylvania, Michigan, and so forth. And he said rightfully that we have been very, very close for a long time, but especially since I endorsed you in 2022. And I would not have won that race without Donald Trump's endorsement. And the president's trust then and his partnership since then has been something I value a great deal.
That is Vance speaking at the Republican National Convention. I just think the timing of this is quite incredible, that Trump was nearly killed. 2 days later, he makes this announcement. It's almost as if he's setting up the MAGA movement, that if this was to happen again, we know who's next in line. But what do you make of Vance, and what, was he a good pick?
Well, you got to remember that Donald Trump invented the original Apprentice, and all around the world there are TV series called The Apprentice, and none of them is as good or as rich as the original. And the guy was a talent picker for, 3-4 decades. He really knows how to pick people. I think J.D. Vance is a marvelous pick. He represents a number of things that may not be obvious to people who aren't American. So first of all, he comes from the Midwest, like I do. The Midwest is regarded in America, in the zeitgeist, in the culture, in the ethos, as truthful, honest, fair, real solid American values. Abraham Lincoln. I mean, you've got a big mouth, hard as nails, tough talking New Yorker in Trump, but you've got a gentler, kinder Midwesterner in J.D. Vance, and the culture goes way back hundreds of years. Books like Winesburg, Ohio, and that which embody the whole Midwest culture. It says a lot to Americans. Secondly, he does come from a very, very dysfunctional and difficult upbringing, and his life also touched on something further south, which is Appalachia, which is where the hill people live, the hillbillies, as they're called, somewhat pejoratively. And that's a culture that's very, very poor and doesn't strive to get out of that poverty. And in fact, they're down on themselves. And that's what his book, Hillbilly Elegy, is about. And he really touched, bestseller, he touched the hearts. And so his second quality is that he really understands poverty and poor people and working class people and the MAGA people and the people that Trump wants to better their lives and represent. So, I mean, he's another hero in the making. He's just a great pick, and he's got very firm views, which I think align with Trump and most of the Republicans. So I think on all counts, it's brilliant. But it doesn't surprise me because the boss of The Apprentice is probably the only person in the world who could pick exactly the right guy at the right time and convey exactly the message that you just said, which is, after all, so clever.
What I find really interesting is that he wasn't originally a Trump supporter. And I think we're really seeing that in this election campaign. We're seeing a lot of people that didn't like Trump. They didn't vote for him in 2020. They didn't vote for him in 2016. But this time around, they are. Why do you think that is?
Well, again, it's a wonderful message. In other words, instead of all the fabulous candidates he had around him, all of whom have been his ardent supporters, and we're all fighting sort of in the sandbox in debates that he wouldn't attend and said, why should I? This is actually recruitment for my VP. Of all those people who supported him, he very, very astutely, strategically, and cleverly picked somebody who had been his adversary to show how open-minded and fair he is and how critical and strategic his judgment is. Don't pick somebody I like. Don't pick somebody who sucks up to me. Pick somebody who's right for this moment. I think he would have picked Vance without the assassination attempt.
Right. What are you expecting to hear from Donald Trump? We know that he tore up the original speech he was set to make at the Republican National Convention. He's written a new one, which is expected to be largely about unity. What do you think we're going to hear from Donald Trump?
I think we're going to hear a lot of words about unity and coming together and working together and all the rest. And I think that'll last a few weeks because I think they'll go for him again. And as his son said today, he's going to counterpunch right back. I mean, that's American politics, and the Democrats have been playing very dirty. And they're not going to stop because of this, but there'll be words both sides about goodwill and fellowship and playing fair. But I think it will start again pretty soon, and reach quite a fever pitch before the convention. All depends whether Joe Biden stays or not.
Do you think now that Joe Biden has announced that he has COVID, there's speculation online that maybe this is a medical announcement that he might use this as an excuse to drop out of the race?
Well, anybody can get COVID, and apparently it said his symptoms are mild. I mean, the first question, Gabriella, is medically what will happen to him? Will it disable him? Will it enfeeble him? And if it does, then I think it's a foregone conclusion. But, if he bounces back from COVID in a week or so, I don't think it will really have any bearing. It's a bug and anybody could get it. It's just unfortunate it comes now. And that aside, I still think the pressure is going to mount on him to drop out because he can't serve as president for another 4 years. It's just not possible.
The clock is ticking and it doesn't sound like he wants to drop out, but we'll see. We are learning more about what unfolded on Saturday, including reports that Secret Service had flagged that Thomas Matthew Crooks as suspicious more than an hour before he took his shot at Donald Trump. Was this a massive failure by the Secret Service?
I mean, on the face of it, sure. I mean, this guy walked in with a rangefinder, and that raised their suspicions, and they followed him around. But the police then lost him, apparently. But there's so many videos, on people's mobile phones, people's cell phones, showing him sitting on the roof with people screaming to the Secret Service and the police to do something. There are videos that show I mean, the big thing for me was that the lady who runs the Secret Service said, look, we couldn't put people on that roof because it's a sloped roof and health and safety would dictate it was dangerous. And then, of course, somebody came up and said, look at the roof the snipers were on. It was even more sloped. What are you talking about? I mean, there's so many things that don't hang together here. I don't believe that this was just some local nutter, end of story. I don't know what the explanation is, but it's got to be more than that. Nobody could get near him like that without some gross incompetence or worse. And I dread to think what the worse is, but it's kind of like JFK. Maybe we'll never know the answer, but there's so much stuff floating around as there wasn't in the days of JFK on film, on social media. A lot of it's probably fake, but it just doesn't compute. It doesn't hang together. I'm very confused.
Why has no one stood down over this? Where is the accountability?
I'm sorry?
Where is the accountability? We've seen no one stand down over this.
Well, I mean, the accountability in what I've seen today seems to be the Secret Service laying it off on the local police force. But I think that the Secret Service is responsible for their subjects' safety, regardless of local law enforcement or anybody else. I mean, if they pick a platoon of Marine commandos and they fail, they're still the ones where the buck stops. The Secret Service has got the ultimate responsibility. So I don't understand these things I'm hearing. I mean, there's certainly, some fairly, useless behavior. The video of that young lady who can't get her gun back in her holster is quite worrying. If you've seen that, I mean, yeah, I'm sure. And to let somebody through with a rangefinder and let him in wandering around, but I don't buy the sloped roof story because the snipers are on a much more sloped roof. I mean, it sounds like an HR, a human resources. I don't want to insult HR, but I mean, it sounds like some box ticking person. Oh, we couldn't let them up there because of health and safety. I mean, come on, you're the Secret Service. You're armed to the teeth. You're supposed to kill on sight. What are you talking about? There's just so much going on that needs to be explained. And the question is, who's going to investigate it? The FBI is investigating now, but Trump has been saying for ages that Biden has weaponized the Department of Justice, which includes the FBI, and he's weaponized the CIA, and he's weaponized all these other agencies against him. So, just like the courts, how's he going to get a fair trial? How's he going to get a fair investigation? Who's going to come in and look at this? I'll be very interested to see what he says in his speech, if anything, about this. But I mean, just everybody I talk to has a feeling that, there's something more here. Let's put it that way. And they just don't know how to get to it.
Just finally, before I let you go, you've spent time with Donald Trump, you've been to Mar-a-Lago. There is still an anti-Donald Trump sentiment that exists here in Australia and other parts of the world, to the point people are saying pretty disgusting things online that, the shooter missed, and that's something along those lines. There are comments that are made at cafes. What would you say about Donald Trump to people who haven't had the opportunity of meeting him? What is he like?
What is he like personally?
Yeah.
He's a big, tall, strapping guy. He looks about 10 years younger in person than he does on the screen. He plays golf most every day. He's very fit. When he walks in the room, he's just got an incredible energy. The aura is amazing. I mean, the room just reverberates when he walks in without even saying a word. He's got a very funny and sarcastic sense of humor. He's sharp. When he speaks to you, you think you're the only person he's speaking to. He can be incredibly charming. And I suppose people who absolutely can't stand him would probably be wound around his little finger in 5 minutes if he wants to turn the charm on. He's very intelligent. He's not the most patient person, from what I can see. Um, has a very inquiring mind, and he's just a hell of a lot of fun to be around. He's very, very interesting guy, and he showed on Saturday. I mean, how many people would have stood up and given that defiant, fist shaking and moved on the way he did? He's a real American hero, and that's what people want. So even people who don't like him, I dare say, would like him more if they were in his presence. And he's a real charmer. He'd make sure they do.
Dr. Roger Gewolb, so great to speak with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.